Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2625 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. In today's Wisdom Nugget, we'll be continuing our exploration of Psalm 66 in the New Living Translation, picking up where we left off and delving into verses 8 through 15. In our last trek, we heard the psalmist's exhilarating call for all the earth to shout in joyful praises to God, acknowledging His awesome deeds and universal power. Now the focus shifts slightly, moving from the broad scope of God's global sovereignty to a more intimate look in His relationship to His people, how He preserves, tests, and ultimately delivers them. These verses speak to the sometimes challenging, yet always purposeful path that God leads us on. They offer a perspective that would resonate deeply with the Israelites, a nation whose history and vivid tapestry of miraculous preservation and refining trials. As we journey through this passage, let's consider what it meant to them, and what it means to us today in our own personal and collective wisdom treks. Psalm 66, verses 8 through 12. Let the whole world bless our God and loudly sing His praises, for He keeps us alive and prevents our feet from slipping. You, O God, have tested us, refining us like silver. You sent us into the prison and laid burdens on our back. You let our enemies trample over our heads. We went through fire and water, but you brought us to a place of abundance. The psalmist begins the section by echoing the universal call to praise from the opening verses, but with a slightly different emphasis. Let the whole world bless our God and loudly sing His praises. The word bless here implies a deep sense of reverence and thankfulness, acknowledging God as the source of all goodness. It's a call for a vocal, audible expression of His blessings, not a silent gratitude, but declared praises that can be heard by others. The reasons for this renewed call to praise is deeply personal and communal for the people of God, for He keeps us alive and prevents our feet from slipping. In the ancient world, life was often precarious. The threat of disease, famine, war, and natural disasters was ever present. To be kept alive by one's own soul and life, as some translations render the Hebrew, was a profound blessing worthy of continuous praise. The imagery of preventing our feet from slipping speaks to God's protection from stumbling, falling, or being utterly overthrown by dangers that surround them. Think of trekking through a narrow, treacherous mountain pass. One wrong step can be disastrous. The psalmist is praising God for being that sure ground beneath their feet, their stability in a shaky world. Then comes a remarkable and perhaps, to our modern ears, a challenging declaration. You, O God, have tested us, refining us like silver. This isn't the voice of someone complaining about hardships. It's a voice of someone who understands that their trials had a divine purpose. The ancient Israelites experienced numerous periods of testing, the wilderness wanderings, foreign invasions, and exile. These weren't random misfortunes. The psalmist sees them as God's deliberate actions. The analogy of refining silver is particularly insightful from an ancient perspective. Silver ore is mixed with impurities or dross. To extract the pure silver, the ore was subjected to intense heat in a furnace or crucible. The heat causes the silver to melt and the impurities to rise to the surface, where they can be skimmed off. This process is repeated until the refiner sees his own reflection clearly in the molten silver, indicating its purity. For the Israelites, this would have been a familiar process. They understood the trials and the difficulties that face, like the refining fire, designed to burn away the impurities of their national and individual lives. Things like idolatry, disobedience, and reliance on human strength rather than on God. It was a painful process, but a necessary one for them to become the people God intended them to be. It's a powerful illustration for us as well. For our own trials, though difficult, may often seem God's way of refining our faith, revealing and removing the dross of our own self-reliance, fear, and unhealthy attachments. The psalmist describes the severity of this testing in vivid terms. You sent us into the prison and laid burdens on our back. You let our enemies trample over our heads. These are powerful metaphors of oppression, hardship, and humiliation. Sent us into prison could have referred to periods of captivity or severe restriction. Laid burdens on our back evokes the image of forced labor or overwhelming hardship, perhaps even direct reference to the bondage in Egypt. Let our enemies trample over our heads paints a picture of utter subjugation and defeat at the hands of their enemies. These were not light afflictions. They were crushing experiences that tested their endurance to the limit. The summary of these trials is equally striking. We went through the fire and water. This is an ancient idiom representing passing through an extreme life-threatening danger. Fire and water, powerful and destructive forces, symbolizes overwhelming difficulties, perilous situations, and intense suffering. For the Israelites, this could have called to mind specific events like the fiery serpents, or the lack of water in the wilderness, or the destructive power of invading armies, or the overwhelming despair of exile. For us, it speaks for those times in life when we feel engulfed by overwhelming circumstances, facing challenges that seem insurmountable. Yet the psalmist doesn't end with despair. He concludes in this section with a triumphal declaration, "But you brought us to a place of abundance." After the testing, the refining, the hardship, and the peril, God led them to a place of safety, rest, and blessing. The Hebrew word here can mean a spacious place, a place of relief and freedom from constraint. This would have resonated deeply with the Israelites, reminding them of their journey from the confined slavery of Egypt through the harsh wilderness to the spacious land of Canaan, to a land flowing with milk and honey. It's a powerful reminder that God's testing is not meant to destroy us, but to prepare us for the blessing and abundance that He has in store. The path through the fire and water leads us to a place of freedom and flourishing. This powerful testimony of God's preservation, testing, and deliverance leads the psalmist to a deeply personal response. Let's read the next 3 verses in Psalm 66, verses 13 through 15. I will come to your temple with burnt offerings and fulfill the vows I made to you. Yes, the vows I made when I was in trouble. That is why I am bringing you the burnt offerings and fattened animals, including rams, bulls, and male goats, Selah. In response to God's faithfulness in bringing him through the trials, the psalmist makes a personal declaration of worship and commitment when he says, I will come to your temple with burnt offerings and fulfill the vows I have made to you. Yes, the vows I made when I was in trouble. The temple in Jerusalem was a central place of worship for the Israelites, the dwelling place of God's presence. Coming to the temple with offerings was a tangible expression of devotion and thankfulness. Burnt offerings were among the oldest and most significant sacrifices in ancient Israelite worship. In a burnt offering, the entire animal, except for the hide, was consumed by fire on the altar. This symbolizes a complete dedication and surrender to God. It wasn't just giving a part, it was giving the whole. For the psalmist to promise burnt offerings signifies a profound level of gratitude and commitment in response to God's saving work. The mention of fulfilling vows is also crucial. In times of distress or need, it was common for an individual in ancient Israel to make vows to God, promising to do something specific or offer a particular sacrifice if God would deliver them and answer their prayer. These vows were considered to be a sacred commitment that were to be honored once deliverance occurred. The psalmist specifically mentions a vow that he made when I was in trouble. This highlights the desperation of his situation and the earnestness of his plea to God. Now that God has brought him through, he is intent to keeping his word. The act of fulfilling vows through sacrifice was a public acknowledgement of God's intervention. It was a way of saying, I promised this when I was in a desperate situation, and now that God has faithfully delivered me, I am publicly honoring my commitment and giving him the credit. It reinforces a covenant relationship between the individual and God, demonstrating trust and faithfulness on the human side in response to God's divine faithfulness. The psalmist elaborates on the scale of his intended offering. That is why I am bringing you burnt offerings of fattened animals, including rams, bulls, and male goats. Offering fatted animals indicates bringing the best, most valuable animals, a significant sacrifice that reflected the magnitude of his gratitude and the depth of his devotions. Rams, bulls, and male goats were all the animals prescribed for the various sacrifices in the Levitical law, further emphasizing the psalmist's intention to worship God according to the established customs. This personal response of worship and sacrifices in verse 13 through 15 serves as a powerful reminder for us. While the practice of animal sacrifices is no longer required because of the once-and-all sacrifice of Jesus Christ, the principle remains. When God brings us through the time of testing and delivers us from our troubles, our response should be one of heartfelt gratitude, renewed commitment, and tangible acts of worship. This might involve offering our time, our resources, or our talents, or simply dedicating ourselves to more fully serving Him. Our sacrifices are now spiritual. The offering of our lives as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God, as Romans chapter 12, verse 1 tells us. The Selah at the end of verse 15 invites us to pause and reflect. Consider the journey described in these verses. From being kept alive and stable by God through the refining fire and water of testing and oppression, to being brought into the place of abundance, and finally, a personal response for vowed worship and generous sacrifices. What trials are you currently facing? How is God using them to refine you, to burn away the impurities in your faith and character? Can you look back on past difficulties and see how God brought you through to a spacious place? In light of His faithfulness, are you responding with gratitude, fulfilling the commitments that you made to Him in your time of need, and offering Him the worship that is due? Psalm 66, verses 8 through 15, reminds us that the path of faith is not always easy, but it is always purposeful. God is with us through fire and water, refining us and leading us to a place of abundance. Our part is to trust His process, remembering His faithfulness, and respond with the heartfelt praise and dedicated lives. Let the whole world bless our God. Let our lives be a testament to His power to preserve, refine, and deliver. And so ends another segment of Wisdom Trek. I pray that our time in Psalm 66 today has encouraged you and provided you with some valuable insights for your own journey. And if you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review. Then encourage your friends and family to join us and come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, and most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal. As we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. See you next time for more daily wisdom.